Life rarely announces its pivotal moments. They whisper, hide in the ordinary, and demand we truly see. I certainly wasn't expecting anything profound that Tuesday. Just another evening blurring into the rest. But as I was heading upstairs, lost in the labyrinth of my thoughts, I saw my older brother, Ethan, standing by the stairway, unusually still and deliberate. He wasn't engrossed in his gadgets or rushing to the kitchen for snacks. He was patiently waiting for me. The words he said in that instant, I still grapple with their full impact. But they subtly reconfigured how I viewed both him and, more importantly, myself. Hold on just a moment before we continue. If this story is touching something in you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference and helps me bring you more stories like this one. I also want to hear from you. Write in the comments. Where are you right now? Are you tucked away in a peaceful village where stars fill the sky, or surrounded by the hum and glow of a city that never sleeps? The end of August was approaching, casting a golden hue as the sun started to descend across the sky. I had just returned from my part-time role at the local bookstore, my shoulders slumped with the weight of unread books and unfulfilled dreams. University, I realized, was becoming a bigger burden than it once seemed. The pressure to succeed was becoming more unbearable. Our house hummed with the subdued rhythm of daily life. The TV murmured from the lounge, likely broadcasting the news that my father seemed to religiously absorb. An inviting aroma filled the air, reminding me of my mother's afternoon batch of apple crumble. As I slowly made my way up the stairs, my hand gliding along the smooth banister, I caught sight of him. Ethan. He was just standing there, not quite ascending, not quite descending, just present. Ethan was never still, ever. He was always on the move, heading out for a training session, fixing up the garden fence, making my dad chuckle with his witty comebacks. But that evening, he radiated quietness. And his posture was also unusual. He was deep in thought and still. I paused, not sure whether to greet him or continue, but his eyes made me stop. Without saying a word, he greeted me with a nod, then looked down at the floor for a moment like he was pondering something of profound importance. Hey, Lilac, he said, his voice softer than usual. I replied with a smile. Hey, you okay? He hesitated, looked up once more. Do you have a sec? There's something I need to tell you. Don't go upstairs yet. The air seemed to thicken, the atmosphere suddenly charged. My brother and I weren't estranged, but we weren't exactly the sharing type either. We cared deeply for each other, but it was expressed through silent gestures, lifts to work, shared treats, covering each other's tracks with mom and dad. He looked nervous, as though he had carefully practiced a speech only to have it almost escape him. I tilted my head and leaned against the banister. Sure, what's up? He took a deep breath and rubbed the back of his neck. I've been thinking about you a lot recently, he said. And not in a weird way. Thinking about everything you're going through. The pressures of studies, mom nudging you about results, dad seeing you as the star student who has her life figured out just because you act positively and smile. That statement landed hard. Because it was the absolute truth. I always had the role of being the well-behaved, intelligent, and organized child who has her life together and is happy. I had adopted the persona so well and so convincingly. I see you when you come home completely drained, when you fake a little laugh to make everything seem fine, and I saw you crying in your car outside a few days ago. I didn't mention it then, but it stuck with me. I glanced down, my throat constricting. I thought I'd successfully concealed that moment. I quickly wiped my face before entering the house. I brushed it off as allergies, blaming it on the cold wind. But he had noticed. And he remembered. Ethan, I started, but he raised a hand, his palm facing towards me. Just let me finish. I don't have a grand plan or a long speech prepared. I just want you to know you're not invisible, Lilac. Not to me. And I think you're far stronger than you give yourself credit for. Silence stretched between us, thick, yet not uncomfortable. Like the calming aftermath of a storm when you realize everything is still standing. I didn't know what to say, just a wave of something washed over me. Maybe relief, gratitude, or both. Thanks, I managed, my voice barely audible. He shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. I always notice, Lilac. You're my little sister. It's my job. Then, in classic Ethan fashion, he gently patted my head. Okay, now go upstairs before Mom thinks we're plotting something. I laughed, a genuine laugh this time, light and surprised. As I ascended the stairs, I felt transformed. Not because everything was perfect, but because someone saw me. Truly saw me. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough. At least for now. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my bedroom window with a gentle warmth, as though even nature had decided to tread lightly. I lingered in bed longer than usual, not from fatigue, but because I was replaying the conversation I had with Ethan in my mind, considering what he said about being seen. It's incredible how a single moment, a few words spoken quietly on the stairs, can rearrange your entire perspective. I had always seen my brother as existing in a world of his own. We were close, like most siblings who grew up under the same roof, sharing meals, creating memories, telling jokes. But we had our separate lives, too. I never expected him to pay attention to my silence. When I went downstairs, the house was quiet. Dad had already left for work, and Mom was out in the garden. I saw Ethan in the kitchen leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, nodding at me. Morning. Morning. I replied, my voice sounding lighter. I poured myself some juice, joining him at the counter. For a moment, neither of us spoke. But this silence was different. It wasn't avoidance. It was a comfortable understanding. You okay? He asked, still not looking up from his phone. Yeah, I said. Better, actually. He gave a small smile, not needing to ask why. Later, I walked towards the park. It was a spontaneous decision. No bag, no music, just me and the crisp air. The park was nearly empty, occupied by a few older couples and a child scooting around. I sat on a bench beneath a tree and watched the leaves fall. It had been so long since I had simply allowed myself to be. No plans, no pressure. I realized I had been performing for so long, trying to be the version of myself that made everyone else comfortable, the reliable daughter, the responsible student, the cheerful friend. I had become so adept at concealing the cracks that I had forgotten they existed. But now, with Ethan's words still lingering in my mind, maybe I didn't have to pretend all the time. Maybe it was acceptable to admit that I didn't have everything figured out. That thought remained with me into the evening. I found Ethan in the garage tinkering with his old motorcycle that he always planned on fixing but never quite got around to. He looked up as I entered. Going to let me help with that, then? I teased. He smirked. You know how to fix a busted fuel line? I shrugged. Nope, but I can hand you tools and provide sarcastic comments while you work. Perfect, he said, tossing me a cloth. That's all I need. We worked in comfortable silence, the sound of metal clinking and the smell of grease filling the air. It was healing, simply sharing a space without the need to fill it with constant chatter. Eventually, I sat back on the workbench, watching him. Can I ask you something? I said. He glanced over. Shoot. That night, when you saw me crying in the car, why didn't you say anything then? Why wait? He didn't respond immediately. He tightened a bolt, set down the wrench, and leaned back. Because I didn't want to approach you like I was judging you, he said. Sometimes, when you're struggling, the last thing you need is someone pointing it out, even if they mean well. I thought I would tell you at the right moment. I wanted to tell you that I saw you and that I cared. I just didn't want to do it in a way that made you feel small. His honesty hit me hard. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You didn't make me feel small, I said. You made me feel seen. In a good way. He nodded slowly. That's what I hoped. There was a pause. Then he added, Lilac, you don't have to carry everything alone, you know. I mean, you can. You're tough enough, but you don't have to. I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. That I didn't have to be the strong one all the time. That relying on someone didn't equate to weakness. It meant I trusted them. And I trusted Ethan. Later that night, I thought about when we were kids, when he chased me around the garden or sneaked me extra snacks when Mom wasn't looking. Somewhere, we'd grown into our own lives, and our distance had grown. But now, that distance felt smaller. For the first time in years, I fell asleep feeling that someone was standing guard at the stairs, not to watch over me, but to walk alongside me if I needed them. The following days moved slowly. Nothing dramatic, no sudden realizations, no chaos. But something had undeniably shifted within me. It wasn't solely about Ethan and the stairs anymore. It was about everything those few moments had stirred up. I began noticing more, not just about him, but about myself. How I carried the pressure of always being okay. How I nodded along in conversations without letting people know when I needed to pause. How I had become accustomed to holding things in that letting them out felt alien. One afternoon, I took a walk. No phone, no music, no distractions. I ended up near my old primary school, now a community center. The swing set was still there. Rusted, creaking, but still standing. I sat on a swing and looked around at the silent yard. Memories flooded back, playing tag with Ethan, daring each other to jump off the swings, sharing secrets. And then something unexpected occurred. Ethan appeared. I didn't hear him approach. He just sat on the swing next to me. "You always came here when you needed to think," he said, gently swaying. I smiled. "You remember that?" "Of course," he said. "You thought you were sneaking out with that flashlight, but I always saw the glow under your door." I laughed softly. "You never told Mom and Dad." "Nah," he said. "It was your place." I respected that. We sat in silence. The wind rustled the leaves. I looked at him and saw a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I nodded. "That night I saw you crying, what was it about?" "You don't have to tell me, but I've been wondering." I looked at the paint peeling on the swing chain. I don't know if it was one thing. I think it was everything. School. Feeling like I'm running out of time to figure out who I'm supposed to be. And the weird thing is, everyone thinks I have it all together. I've worn that mask for so long. I think I forgot how to take it off. He nodded slowly. "I get that more than you know." I looked at him, surprised. "You?" "Yeah," he said. "People think I always have a plan. Steady, unfazed. But I have doubts, too. I wonder if I'm making the right choices, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to, if I'll regret something I didn't even realize I missed." There was a vulnerability in his voice I hadn't heard before. "You ever feel like you're performing a version of yourself?" I asked. "All the time," he said. "But I think that's part of growing up. You try on different versions until one feels real. And then, if you're lucky, you find people who see through the performance. Like you did," I said softly. He gave a quiet smile. "Like you did." The sun dipped lower, casting shadows. We stood and walked home together, the space between us open and warm. That evening, I found an old photo of Ethan and me. He with a crooked grin, me missing my front teeth. I framed it and put it on my nightstand. Not to remember the past, but to remind me of something I had rediscovered. That no matter how far we drift, family has a way of anchoring us back. And sometimes all it takes is a quiet voice near the stairs to bring you home. One Saturday morning, there was a different atmosphere around the house that made me feel unusually good, but it was not in a dramatic way. It was more subtle and gentle. Mom had gone to the farmer's market, Dad was working on something in the back garden, and I was drinking tea in the kitchen when Ethan came in. "Plans today?" he asked, yawning. "Not really. Maybe organize my room, clear out some old stuff," I said. "Sounds ambitious," he grinned. "Yeah, well," I said, "I think I'm ready to let go of some stuff." He didn't ask what I meant. I appreciated that. He grabbed an apple, then watched me for a moment. "Mind if I help?" "I've got no plans either." I looked up, surprised. "Sure, if you're up for digging through dusty old notebooks and childhood drawings." "Hey." "Some of my best work is in those," he said, grinning. "Remember that stick figure comic where I was a ninja and you were a wizard?" I choked on my tea, laughing. "You mean the one where I always had to save you?" "Details, revisionist history," he said mock seriously. So we went upstairs, box after box of forgotten keepsakes, school projects, notes, drawings, and birthday cards. We laughed, and each item came with a memory. I found an old notebook filled with poems I had written. I flipped through the pages, embarrassed, but also a little proud. Ethan looked over my shoulder, reading a few lines. "This one's pretty good," he said quietly. "Really?" I asked, skeptical. "Yeah, you had a voice, you still do." And the way he said it made me believe it. I sat back against the bed, surrounded by the papers and old photos. Ethan sat opposite me, holding a picture of us at a summer fair, faces sticky with joy. "Do you ever think about who we used to be?" I asked. "All the time," he said. "But I think more about who we're becoming. It's weird. I always thought growing up would feel like, I don't know, arriving somewhere. Like one day you just know who you are. But I'm starting to think it's more like just getting comfortable being unfinished." He smiled, a soft pride in his eyes. "That's probably the most grown-up thing I've heard you say." We sat like that, quiet, knowing we had both been carrying things for years that we had named. I realized I spent so long trying to prove that I was strong, that I never noticed how strong it was to let someone in. Later, I took a walk, the air cool. I thought about the past weeks, the simple words from my brother that had opened me up. He didn't fix me, he gave me a push. That evening, the sky was turning purple. I walked around and thought about it all. It had started when my brother was waiting for me near the stairs, and it was only a few minutes and a couple of words that opened me up. I realized that evening as dusk fell.